Good evening, and thank you to Margaret Farley for starting us off on that beautiful and profound note. I'm delighted to celebrate the leadership of Marie Marshall Fortune and the achievements and trajectory of the FaithTrust Institute. To say that they were ahead of the curve, given the plethora of perpetrators whose crimes have been made public of late, is to vastly understate the case. As I was getting dressed to come over here this afternoon, I was watching the ministers line up to extol the virtues of Roy Moore today. And it was an ironic juxtaposition of moral agency, I thought, to imagine who would be in this room today and what we would have said under the same circumstances. I'm mindful of the extraordinary debt religious groups owe to you, Marie, and to FaithTrust colleagues for making the world safer by foregrounding religious contributions to both violence and its eradication. The work is far from over, but the exemplary, pioneering, always, as we say in Spanish, de confianza, reliable, that is, to which I would add, with integrity, the no-nonsense approach, that is Marie Fortune, and that will be the gold standard long after our generation, Marie, is enjoying eternal rest. I doubt sincerely that Marie Fortune would point to Mary, the Virgin Mother of Jesus, as an excuse for pedophilia. I first heard about Marie in the early 1970s when she and Carol Adams were students at Yale Divinity School. They were students of Margaret Farley and of Lenny Russell. I, at the time, was at Harvard Divinity School, that other school that teaches theology in this area. Carol Adams had the good sense to spend a year in Boston, where Mary Daly and others were in full flight. Marie persisted at Yale. Margaret has politely called it a fit. We were probably at the same conferences in those years, Marie. I knew of you through Nancy Richardson and the seminary quarter at Grailville people in the 1970s. But our mutual friends, Carol Adams and Nancy Richardson, insisted that we should meet, which we did several years later. I can't pinpoint where. Maybe you have a better, no, we've just always known each other. I can't pinpoint where, but the Church's Center for the Prevention of Sexual and Domestic Violence, known in those days as the Center for the Prevention of All Bad Things. We did call it the Center, didn't we call it the Center for the Prevention of All Bad Things? And the Women's Alliance for Theology, Ethics, and Ritual, WATER, where I work, had both gotten off the ground by then. We founders, being scholar activists, were well advised to stick together, and we have. In 1987, we were at a conference, Marie, in Amsterdam on lesbian and gay studies, and then we did a workshop at the Dutch Grail at the Tiltenberg outside of Amsterdam. It was the first of our many happy collaborations that have included team teaching at Pacific School of Religion, various gatherings sponsored by FaithTrust or by WATER. I published in and served on the editorial board of the Journal of Religion and Abuse. We are in regular correspondence, have occasional sanity-producing conversations, and have initiated a popular Skype exchange with WATER summer interns, some here present, that I am informed change people's lives. When you come into the WATER office by Skype, they say, oh, my life has changed. Well, yes, good. So I think of Marie and our dear friend, the vegan theorist, Carol Adams, who couldn't be with us today, as members of my department, since each of us works beyond the academic confines. I can assure you that our faculty meetings are never dull. Marie and FaithTrust staff are not just the first, but simply the best when it comes to dealing with religious aspects of sexual and domestic violence. Not a week goes by that I don't refer someone to them, either to their publications, to the staff directly, or to some aspect of their work. I am very sorry to have to report this frequency, because it implies that violence is ubiquitous, especially for women, children, and people of color. It is. I can only imagine that the phones are ringing off the hook in the office this season. We at WATER are concerned with theology and sexual ethics, LGBTIQA issues in religion, liturgy, ritual, pastoral counseling, and so forth. As we go about our work, Marie and FaithTrust people are the go-to resource when it comes to religion and violence. For example, if we receive a book at WATER for review, and it does not feature their work prominently, we leave it aside, judging it simply not up to standards. That's how seriously we take their work. Let me explain two insights that I personally have taken from Marie, and they stay with me in a very profound way. The first is what she says over and over, that all women have experienced and or live in the fear of violence. This has been proven true countless times, not least in the last months, when women by the droves have accused Harvey Weinstein, Mark Halperin, Roy Moore, and God help us, even George H.W. Bush in his wheelchair of sexual abuse. The Me Too campaign was so overwhelming, one wanted to ask, who has not been abused? Marie Fortune was right. We need to start posting he too, naming names. The second thing I take with me, Marie, from you is sometimes you say those who work to overcome violence are themselves perpetrators. I didn't want to believe this. It seemed counterintuitive. In October of this year, Army officials confirmed in the Washington Post that 8 soldiers and civilians trained to deter sex offenses or help victims have been investigated over the past year in connection with sexual assault. Myriad women have reported Mennonite theologian John Howard Yoder's sexual abuse, and they make a similar point. A paragon of peace and nonviolence was a known and repeated perpetrator. Once again, Marie Fortune was right. Insights honed over the years by tragic stories, heroic efforts, interreligious collaboration, countless trainings, expert witness testimonies, writings, sermons, and the like, have given this organization the reputation that it deserves. The quote from Carol Winkleman that we were asked to reflect on in this panel, that Marie Fortune has pioneered more pastoral concern, much pastoral concern for victims, while true, I think is a drastic understatement. Surely the product of its 2003 context when she wrote it. Marie and Faith Trust colleagues have developed the most widely respected, widely used, and widely recommended resources. Videos, pamphlets, books, trainings in several languages. They have created what I think of as the scaffolding on which all other religiously informed sexual and domestic violence efforts are built. They are synonymous with this work, even though they have not succeeded in eliminating all bad things yet. Persevere, sisters, persevere. Let me simply close with the 3 major accomplishments, in my view, of the Faith Trust Institute, as these, in fact, form the contours of their future work. First, they have made religion a part of the larger conversation to eradicate sexual and domestic violence. For good reason, many of our colleagues beyond religion look askance at dangerous houses of worship, women blaming religious teachings, and unhelpful pastoral accompaniment. Faith Trust people have taken the first, but by no means the last steps to change the perception by elucidating the dual role of religion in the causes and cures of violence. Keep going. Second, the very names, Marie Marshall Fortune and Faith Trust Institute, strike terror in the souls of many denominational officials who know how effective they are. There needs to be much more done, much more push to do preventative education, especially in theological training settings. Clergy sexual abuse was a well-kept secret that Marie and the Faith Trust Institute brought to light. It is provably less expensive on many levels to bring them in to teach than it is to pay for the damages that accrue when religious professionals abuse. And third, interreligious work, and now work with people who are spiritual but not religious, the so-called nuns, not the Margaret Farley NUNs, but the NONES, the nuns who are the cutting edge of the anti-violence movement. I admire Faith Trust's work with Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, and other religious communities. What Faith Trust does is to collaborate with each group on its own terms. This work not only makes the world safer, but it adds a unique and welcome layer to multi-faith efforts, and it is useful now for those who profess no faith whatsoever. I wish you, Marie, and the entire Faith Trust community, the staff, the board, and funders, many more years of successful, if not easy, work. I thank you sincerely on behalf of Water, and on behalf of countless groups represented in this room and those who couldn't be with us, who have come to rely on your leadership and to trust your insights. I ask you to keep pushing the horizons so that our daughters' children and their children will have to ask us what in the world it meant to be a survivor. Thank you very much. Marie.